Mom is, of course, moving to Genovia with me, and it is except Fat Lilly. He's totally adapted to being a role.
The Princess Diaries is a 2001 American romantic comedy film directed by Garry Marshall. It was released on the 3rd of August 2001 and distributed by Buena Vista Pictures, which was the theatrical distribution arm of the Walt Disney Company. The film was produced by Whitney Houston and Deborah Martin Chase through their production company Brown House Productions in association with Walt Disney Pictures. Yes, that Whitney Houston, the legendary singer and actress, was a film producer on this movie, which is a fact that surprises many people who discover it for the first time. Houston had been developing the property after falling in love with Meg Cabot's novel, and she brought it to Disney with Chase, her producing partner. Together, they championed the project and saw it through to completion. The film is based on the debut novel of the same name written by Meg Cabot. That novel was published in October of the year 2000. So the film came remarkably quickly after the book, arriving just 1 year later. That kind of speed in Hollywood is almost unheard of, and it tells you how much enthusiasm surrounded the story from the very first moment people read it. Something about the premise clicked immediately for the people who encountered it, and they moved fast to put it on screen. The screenplay was written by Gina Ventkos, who made a number of significant and interesting changes from the source material. We will go through those changes in detail later in the script, because understanding what was adapted, what was changed, and what was invented for the film tells you a great deal about the choices being made and why. The director Garry Marshall was 67 years old when he made this film. He had been working in Hollywood for decades, first as a television writer and producer who created some of the most beloved shows in American television history, including Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and then as a film director responsible for films like Pretty Woman in 1990, Runaway Bride in 1999, and Beaches in 1988. Marshall had a very specific sensibility. He made warm films. He made funny films. He made films that believed in people and in the possibility that things could work out. He did not make films with a great deal of darkness or ambiguity. His world was a world where the problems were real, but the warmth was realer, and that sensibility is exactly what The Princess Diaries needed. The film was not a Netflix original. In 2001, Netflix was still primarily a DVD by mail service and did not produce original content of any kind. The Princess Diaries was a fully theatrical release that opened in movie theaters across the United States on the 3rd of August 2001 and then rolled out internationally in the weeks and months that followed. It was a wide release, which means it opened on a very large number of screens simultaneously, reflecting Disney's confidence in the film's commercial potential. It was not part of any cinematic universe. The concept of cinematic universes as we now understand them did not really exist yet in 2001. The Marvel Cinematic Universe would not begin until Iron Man in 2008. The Princess Diaries was a standalone film, a complete story in itself, though it later spawned a sequel. It was never designed to be part of a larger connected world of films. It was designed to be exactly what it was, a warm, funny, emotionally true story about a girl discovering who she is. The film was made on a production budget of approximately $26 million. That is a modest budget even by 2001 standards, especially for a Disney film. The studio was betting on the material and the talent rather than on spectacle. There were no massive special effect sequences, no elaborate set pieces that required enormous financial investment. The money went into production design, locations, costumes, and most importantly, into putting together a cast that could deliver on the story's emotional promises. Let us talk about the cast for a moment before we go any further because the casting of this film was absolutely essential to its success. Anne Hathaway was cast as Mia Thermopolis, and this was her first major film role. She had done some television work before this, but nothing significant. She was essentially an unknown. She was 19 years old during production. The story of how she got the part has become something of a Hollywood legend. She was apparently the only girl who auditioned who, when she fell out of her chair during the audition, did not stop and look around to see if anyone had noticed. She just kept going. That quality, that physical comfort with disaster, and that complete lack of vanity about looking foolish was exactly what the role required, and Garry Marshall saw it immediately and cast her on the spot. Whether every detail of that story is exactly accurate, the spirit of it is true. Hathaway brought an absolutely extraordinary quality of physical and emotional openness to this role that made Mia feel like a completely real person. Julie Andrews was cast as Queen Clarisse Rinaldi. Andrews was 65 years old when filming took place, and she brought 65 years of extraordinary experience to the role. She was Mary Poppins, she was Maria Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. She was a genuine Hollywood and theatrical legend. The decision to put Julie Andrews in a Disney production about a queen was clearly made with great awareness of the symbolic weight it carried. Andrews did not just play a queen, she was a queen in terms of her presence and her history and what she represented. And she did remarkable things with the role, bringing warmth and humor and genuine vulnerability to a character who could easily have been just a magnificent figure of authority. Hector Elizondo played Joe, the head of Clarisse's security detail. Elizondo had worked with Garry Marshall many times before. He appeared in Pretty Woman and Runaway Bride and several other Marshall films. He was Marshall's lucky charm, and Marshall cast him in virtually everything he made. Joe is a small but essential role, and Elizondo fills it with tremendous dignity and warmth. Heather Matarazzo played Lilly Moskowitz and was electrifying in the role. Matarazzo had become known to audiences through her performance in Welcome to the Dollhouse in 1995, where she played a socially awkward middle schooler with painful honesty. Lilly in many ways built on that energy, channeling it into someone who was no longer passive about her outsider status but had turned it into a source of strength and loud, proud individuality. Robert Schwartzman played Michael Moskowitz. He was the younger brother of Jason Schwartzman and a member of the famous Coppola family. He brought a gentle, understated, genuinely warm quality to Michael that was essential to making the character work as a romantic counterpoint to Josh. Mandy Moore played Lana Thomas, the popular girl at school who represents the social hierarchy that Mia exists outside of. Moore was a pop star at the time, and this was one of her early film appearances. She played Lana with comic precision, giving her just enough edge to be believable as a social obstacle without making her cartoonishly cruel. Caroline Goodall played Helen Thermopolis, Mia's mother. She brought real warmth and groundedness to the role, making Helen feel like a genuinely good parent rather than the neglectful or clueless parent that often appears in teenage coming of age stories. Sandra Oh appeared briefly as a guidance counselor and brought enormous comic energy to her scenes. Oh, of course, went on to immense fame through Grey's Anatomy and Killing Eve, but here she was doing small comedic work with real skill. Before we walk through the story beat by beat, we need to understand the world that this story exists in, because the choices made about setting and environment are not accidental. They are deeply meaningful and they do a great deal of work throughout the film. San Francisco was chosen as the setting for the first half of the film, and this was a deliberate and inspired choice. It replaced New York City, which is where the novel takes place. Why the change? Several reasons suggest themselves and they all make good sense. San Francisco is a city of hills and fog and peculiar beauty. It is a city with a long history of embracing people who do not fit in elsewhere, of welcoming unconventional lives and unusual choices. Artists, bohemians, freethinkers, people who live in converted industrial buildings and fill them with color and paint, these people have always been part of San Francisco's character. So when we meet Mia and her mother Helen living in a converted firehouse and filling it with art and warmth and cheerful disorder, the city backdrop makes perfect sense. These are San Francisco people. But San Francisco also has another quality that is important for this story. It is a visually spectacular city. The cable cars and the hills and the Victorian houses painted in bright colors and the bay in the background, all of this gives the film a fairy tale quality before any royalty arrives. San Francisco already looks like somewhere special. It already looks like somewhere a princess might live without knowing it. The city does half the work of establishing the film's visual tone just by being itself. The film captures San Francisco with real love. You can see the research that went into making the city feel specific and real. There are scenes on the cable cars, scenes on the steep residential streets, scenes where the famous fog rolls in from the bay in that mysterious, beautiful way it does, scenes in the kinds of colorful neighborhoods that make the city so distinctive. Garry Marshall clearly had great affection for the city, and that affection shows in every exterior shot. On the other side of the story, we have Genovia. Genovia is a fictional country, but the film gives it a very specific visual identity. It appears to be located somewhere in the Mediterranean, in the general region of Monaco, or perhaps somewhere on the Italian or French Riviera. We see images of rolling green hills, of a beautiful old city with ancient architecture, of a palace that sits against the sky like something from a dream. The production design for Genovia communicates a very specific idea that this is a country that has existed for a very long time, that has deep roots and deep traditions, and that carries the weight of that history in every building and every protocol. The contrast between San Francisco and Genovia is one of the most important visual elements in the film. San Francisco is bright and alive and somewhat chaotic. Everything in it feels in motion, full of energy. Genovia, or at least the idea of Genovia as communicated through the consulate in San Francisco and the images we see, is still and elegant and controlled. Everything in it feels arranged, considered, deliberate. These two words represent the two halves of who Mia is, and the tension between them is the tension at the heart of the story. The consulate in San Francisco, which is where Clarisse stays and where the princess lessons take place, serves as a fascinating transitional space between these two worlds. It exists in San Francisco, but it is not of San Francisco. It is a piece of Genovia that has been planted in the middle of California, and it maintains its formal European character absolutely. The interiors are grand and slightly airless, full of tall ceilings and polished floors and formal furniture. The contrast every time Mia arrives there, tumbling in from the colorful street, still carrying pieces of her school day, is immediate and funny and meaningful. The firehouse home, which was built on a sound stage for the film, is one of the great production design achievements of the movie. It looks genuinely lived in. The walls are covered in paintings, not just decorative paintings, but real paintings that tell you about the person who made them. Helen's art is everywhere. Mia's room is a riot of her own personality, books and drawings, and the evidence of a young life being lived with full commitment. Fat Louis has his places. The kitchen has the warm disorder of a kitchen where people actually cook and eat and sit together. This is not a set that was dressed to look like a home. It is a set that was designed to feel like one, and the difference is enormous. The film opens on a morning in San Francisco. We see the city waking up, the fog still low over the bay, the hills catching the early light. Then we cut inside to Mia's bedroom, and our first image of our protagonist is of a girl lying in bed talking to her cat. Fat Louis, the large orange cat, is lying on Mia's stomach. Mia is talking to him with complete seriousness about the day ahead. She tells him that today is the day she will be noticed. She has decided. She is going to say something in class. She is going to let people see her. Fat Louis regards her with the magnificent indifference of cats, and she takes this as encouragement. This opening is brilliant in its simplicity. Within 60 seconds, we know everything essential about Mia Thermopolis. She is funny, she is self aware about her own invisibility, she is kind to animals. She talks to her cat because the cat is the most reliable audience she has. She wants to change her situation, but she has clearly been wanting this for a while and not quite managing it. And she is, in the most genuine sense, lovable. We follow Mia through her morning routine, and everything about it is slightly chaotic in a way that feels very real. She is not graceful. She does not move through her morning like someone who has it figured out. Things get knocked over. Hair products fail to deliver on their promises. The outfit that looked right in her head does not quite look right in the mirror. But she keeps going. She is resilient in that particular teenage way that involves a great deal of internal catastrophizing but also a fundamental forward momentum. Helen is in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her art. She and Mia have the kind of easy, warm banter that comes from years of genuine mutual affection. Helen is supportive and funny and completely comfortable with who her daughter is. She does not tell Mia to fix her hair or stand up straighter. She tells her she looks great and she means it. This is a home where love comes easily. Mia arrives at school and we see immediately what she meant when she called herself invisible. Grove High School is full of students who have found their place in the social ecosystem. There are the popular kids and the athletes and the artsy kids and the drama kids and the brainiacs and all the various tribes that make up a high school social world. Mia moves through all of them without disturbing any of them. She walks down the hallway and students part around her like water around a stone, not because they dislike her but because they genuinely do not register her presence. Her locker is behind a large American flag on a pole, which swings closed in front of it every time she tries to open it. This is both genuinely funny physical comedy and a perfect visual metaphor for Mia's situation. She cannot even access her own belongings without navigating an obstacle that literally obscures her from view. The universe seems actively committed to keeping her hidden. She finds Lilly, which is the one reliable good thing about every school day. Lilly is at her own locker, surrounded by her things, talking at full volume about something she has opinions about. Lilly always has opinions about something. Today it might be the unfair grading on a recent test, or the cafeteria's treatment of vegetarian students, or the general injustice of some school policy. Lilly has strong feelings about the world and she expresses all of them without filtering and without apology, which is both exhausting and wonderful. Heather Matrazo plays this character with such commitment that Lilly never feels like a type. She feels like a specific and complete human being. She is not just the loud, outspoken friend. She is someone who has decided that the world is full of things worth being outraged about, and that silence in the face of those things is a kind of surrender. She is 15 years old and she has already worked out a fairly complete philosophy about how to live, and she is living it loud. Michael is there too, in the background of these early school scenes. He is Lily's older brother, a senior, tall, and kind of lanky, with a guitar that he carries with him and plays quietly when he is waiting for things. He treats Mia warmly in these scenes without making a big deal of it. He says hello, he makes a small joke, he pays attention to what she says when she says it. In the context of a school where nobody sees Mia at all, Michael's quiet, consistent attention is already telling us something important. In class, Mia tries to make good on her morning promise to herself. She raises her hand to answer a question. The teacher calls on someone else before seeing her. She persists and is eventually called on, and what comes out of her mouth is a quiet, mumbled answer that gets swallowed by the classroom air before it reaches anyone. The teacher asks her to speak up. She speaks up, slightly. Still, nobody can quite hear. The moment passes, and Mia sinks back into her seat, and invisibility resumes. This scene is played for gentle comedy, but it is also genuinely painful in the way that many genuinely comic things about real life are. The humor comes from recognition. The audience, particularly any young audience member who has ever felt invisible, recognizes this experience. It is universal in a way that a more dramatic depiction of it never could be. After school, Mia goes home. Helen meets her at the door with an expression that suggests something unusual is about to happen. She tells Mia that someone has come to see her. Mia asks who. Helen does not quite answer the question directly, which itself tells you that whoever is inside is someone whose name requires a bit of preparation to deliver. And then Mia goes inside and sees Queen Clarisse Rinaldi of Genovia sitting in the middle of their living room. The visual impact of this moment is the movie announcing its central premise in one shot. On the left side of the frame, all the warm, colorful domestic chaos of the Thermopolis home. On the right side of the frame, absolutely contained within it, and utterly unlike everything around her, Clarisse, dressed perfectly, sitting perfectly, surrounded by two security staff who are themselves standing perfectly still. She is like a photograph of European elegance that someone has placed inside a painting of California Bohemia. Julie Andrews plays the moment with complete authority. She is not awkward in this space. She is not out of place in the sense of being uncomfortable. She is simply elsewhere in every possible sense, a person from a completely different world, sitting very calmly in this one, waiting. She stands when Mia enters. She introduces herself. She speaks in the carefully modulated tones of someone who has been speaking carefully all her life. She is Clarisse Rinaldi. She is the Queen of Genovia. And she is Mia's grandmother. Mia's reaction to this information is one of the most perfect comic performances in the film. Anne Hathaway plays the dawning comprehension with a series of expressions that go from polite confusion to genuine disbelief to something approaching hysterics. She looks at Clarisse. She looks at Helen. She looks back at Clarisse. She says something about how she does not think she can be a princess because she is not sure she has the right kind of nose. She says something about how she stepped in gum on the way home. She says that princesses do not step in gum. She says this with absolute conviction as though it is a well established fact about the nature of royalty. Clarisse, throughout all of this, remains completely composed. There is a tiny controlled movement at the corner of her mouth that might be suppressed laughter or might be suppressed dismay. It is impossible to tell. It might be both. The exposition of the scene is handled with elegance. Clarisse explains calmly and clearly that Mia's father was Crown Prince Philip of Genovia. He and Helen fell in love, married briefly, and had Mia before separating. Philip then returned to Genovia and resumed his duties as Crown Prince. He has recently died, and now, with no other heir, The throne of Genovia passes to his only child, which is Mia. Mia, who has gum on her shoe. The weight of this information settles over the scene slowly. Mia keeps searching for reasons it cannot be true. She is not royalty. She is not graceful or polished or any of the things she imagines royalty to be. She lives in a firehouse. Her mother is an artist. She cannot get through a school day without being invisible. Clarisse's response to all of this is beautiful in its simplicity. She does not argue any of these points. She simply says, with complete quiet authority, that none of those things change what is true. And what is true is that Mia is the princess of Genovia. The meeting ends with Clarisse leaving and Mia standing in the middle of the room trying to process something that her brain simply cannot process. She turns to Helen. Helen, who knew this was coming and has been preparing for it in her own quiet way, sits down with her daughter and they begin to talk. The conversation between Mia and Helen after Clarisse leaves is one of the most important scenes in the film, and it is often slightly overlooked because the Clarisse reveal scene is so vivid. But this scene is where the emotional foundation of the story is laid. Helen tells Mia the truth about her father. Not the fairy tale version, not the version that makes everyone look good, but the honest version. She and Philip were very young when they married. They were in love, but they were not compatible in the way that two people need to be to build a life together. He was a prince with duties and responsibilities that he felt he could not abandon. She was an artist who valued freedom and could not live inside the formal world he inhabited. They separated. They remained on good terms. He cared about Mia from a distance. He died before they ever had the chance to truly know each other. This scene is played with real feeling by Caroline Goodall. Helen is not bitter. She is not performing grief or regret. She is simply honest, and her honesty is a gift to Mia, even if Mia cannot fully appreciate it in this moment. The scene also establishes something essential about Helen that matters throughout the film. She is a good mother, not perfect, not without mistakes, but fundamentally good in the way that really counts. Mia processes all of this by going upstairs to her room and talking to Fat Louis about it, which is exactly what she would do. Clarisse does not leave San Francisco. She makes it clear that she is staying for an indefinite period and that she expects Mia to come to the Genovian Consulate for lessons every day after school. These lessons will cover everything Mia needs to know to function as a princess. How to walk, how to sit, how to wave, how to greet people appropriately, how to shake hands, how to eat formally, how to navigate a receiving line, how to speak in public, how to be photographed, how to handle the press, and of course, how to present herself physically as royalty. Mia begins attending the lessons. She arrives at the consulate each day after school, still in her school clothes, still carrying her backpack, still very much herself, and she enters this formal world that could not be more different from her own. The contrast generates a great deal of comedy but also a great deal of genuine tension. The early lessons are a disaster in the most entertaining way. Clarisse attempts to teach Mia the correct way to walk across a room and Mia demonstrates every possible wrong way to do it. She leans too far forward, she swings her arms too much, she looks at her feet. She trips on nothing. She arrives at the other side of the room having somehow knocked over something on a table that was nowhere near her path. Clarisse watches all of this with an expression of contained heroism. She is not unkind. She is never unkind in these scenes. But she is very clear about what needs to happen and she begins methodically working through it. She places a book on Mia's head and asks her to walk. The book falls. She replaces it, the book falls again. This goes on for some time. Eventually, through sheer repetition, something begins to click. The sitting lessons are equally eventful. Clarisse explains that ladies do not sit by falling into chairs. Mia demonstrates that she has been falling into chairs her entire life, and it has served her adequately. Clarisse is not persuaded that adequately is the appropriate standard for a princess. They work on this. The handshaking lessons produce some of the film's best physical comedy. There is apparently a correct way to shake hands with the right amount of pressure and the right angle and the right timing and the right eye contact, and Mia's handshake, while perfectly friendly and normal by civilian standards, is apparently a catastrophe by royal standards. Too enthusiastic, too much of the whole hand, wrong angle. Clarisse demonstrates the correct version. Mia attempts to replicate it and manages something that is somewhere between a regular handshake and a formal one, which is probably progress. But the lessons are not just about physical deportment. They are also where Mia and Clarisse begin to actually talk to each other, and those conversations are where the real story of their relationship begins. There is a scene early in the lessons where Clarisse tells Mia about the wave. The royal wave is a specific gesture, controlled and deliberate, nothing like the enthusiastic whole arm wave of everyday life. Clarisse demonstrates it with perfect precision. Mia attempts it and produces something that could charitably be described as a royal wave if you were feeling very charitable. And then Clarisse, watching Mia's attempt with careful attention, says something unexpected. She says that when she first learned the wave, she was terrible at it too. She practiced for months. She says this very quietly, almost to herself, as if she is telling Mia something she has not told many people, and in that moment, something shifts between them. Mia sees that Clarisse was not always what she is now. She was made, not born, and if she was made, then perhaps Mia can be made too. These small moments of unexpected vulnerability from Clarisse are distributed carefully throughout the film. They never overwhelm the scene they appear in. They are quiet revelations, brief windows into who Clarisse is underneath the queen, but they accumulate over the course of the film into something very substantial, into the portrait of a woman who has spent decades being very good at a very difficult job and who has paid real prices for that commitment. Paolo, the hairstylist, arrives at some point in the early lesson sequence, and the hair scene that follows is one of the most iconic in the film. Paolo is played with magnificent over the top theatrical energy, and he approaches Mia's hair like a sculptor approaching a particularly challenging piece of marble. He examines it from multiple angles. He runs his hands through it with an expression of concentration so intense it is practically suffering. He announces that it is a project and that the project will be undertaken. What results from Paolo's work is Mia with straight, smooth, polished hair. The transformation is genuine. Anne Hathaway looks genuinely different with straight hair. She looks more conventional, more traditional, more like what the world might expect a princess to look like. And when she looks in the mirror, her expression is complicated. She looks almost like someone else. She looks like someone she was told she should look like rather than someone she actually is. Clarisse's response to the new look is genuine approval. She is pleased. It meets the standard she was hoping for. And her pleasure in it is real, which makes the scene interesting. She is not wrong that the polished look is more appropriate for the role. She is not wrong that the wild curls were going to draw the wrong kind of attention in formal royal context. She is applying a genuine and not unreasonable standard for the situation. But the scene invites us to feel the loss even while we appreciate the achievement, and that complexity is what lifts it above being just a simple makeover moment. The wardrobe lessons are also important. Mia's everyday wardrobe is functional but entirely without concern for elegance or formality. She wears things that are comfortable and warm and that blend into backgrounds. The princess wardrobe being assembled for her is entirely different. It is structured and considered and meant to be seen. Trying on these new clothes is its own kind of performance of a self that Mia is not yet sure she wants to perform. Garry Marshall photographs these sequences with real humor and warmth. He does not linger on them longer than they need to be. He trusts his actress to deliver the comedy and the feeling simultaneously, and Hathaway does exactly that. Every scene in the consulate has a quality of a bright student being stressed by a demanding teacher and the education happening in both directions. Clarisse learning about Mia while teaching her is one of the great pleasures of the film. Mia is keeping everything secret from everyone except her mother. She has not told Lily, she has not told Michael, she has not told any of her classmates. She goes to the consulate every day and she comes home every day and she does not talk about where she has been or what she has been learning. This is a significant choice and the film is clear about why Mia makes it. She is afraid of what the information would mean. If she tells people she is a princess, everything changes. They will treat her differently. They will look at her differently. The invisibility that she has always complained about will end. And while that sounds like a good thing, it is also terrifying. Visibility means being seen and being judged. She has spent her whole life arranging things so that judgment could not reach her. Becoming a princess puts her in the middle of everyone's attention, and she is not ready for that. But secrets always create their own problems. The main problem here is that keeping this secret from Lily is a kind of betrayal of the friendship. Lily tells Mia everything. Their friendship is built on complete honesty. Lily runs a television show about truth and authenticity, and she practices what she preaches. For Mia to be walking around every day with information of this magnitude and saying nothing to her best friend is a quiet but genuine act of betrayal, even if Mia does not quite frame it that way to herself. We see the strain of the secret in Mia's interactions with Lily during this period. She is less present. She is more evasive when Lily asks about her afternoons. She is carrying something that takes up space in every conversation and she cannot put it down. Heather Matrazo is excellent in these scenes at playing Lily's growing sense that something is off without playing it as obvious suspicion. Lily is perceptive, but she is also willing to give her friend the benefit of the doubt. And that trust is exactly what makes the eventual betrayal sting. Michael notices the change in Mia too, in his quieter way. He does not press, he does not question, he simply remains steady and present and lets Mia know by his consistency that whatever is happening, he is still there. There is something very tender about how Robert Schwartzman plays Michael's attention to Mia in these sequences. He is watching and waiting and caring without making it into a big thing, which is exactly right for who Michael is. At school, Mia's new look begins to draw attention that she has never experienced before. Students notice her. People who previously walked through her now walk around her and make eye contact. Teachers call on her more readily. This increased visibility is initially disorienting and then gradually a little intoxicating. Being seen is scary, but it is also wonderful in a way she never quite let herself imagine. This is where Josh Bryant enters the story with purpose. Josh is played by Eric Von Detten and he is written and performed with great accuracy. He is the kind of popular boy who moves through high school as though it belongs to him, which in many ways it does. He has the looks and the social capital and the confidence that come from being at the top of the school's hierarchy for as long as he can remember. He is not especially cruel. He is not a bully in the traditional sense. He is simply someone who has never had to be particularly careful with other people because the world has always arranged itself to accommodate him. Josh begins paying attention to Mia. He makes small approaches, sits near her, finds excuses to talk to her. And Mia, who has been invisible to everyone like him for her entire school life, is completely overwhelmed by this attention. She likes it. She likes the feeling of being chosen by someone who everyone else has already chosen. She likes the way people look at her differently when Josh is talking to her. Lily does not like Josh and she makes this known to Mia with characteristic directness. She tells Mia that Josh is only interested in her because of the princess thing, even though Lily does not yet know with certainty that Mia actually is a princess. She operates on instinct, and her instincts about Josh are exactly right. But Mia, wrapped up in the novelty of being chosen, is not in a place to hear this. This is a very true moment in the film. The experience of having a friend whose instincts about someone are better than your own, whose warning you cannot quite receive because you want too much for the person they are warning you about to be good, is universal. And the film handles it with real honesty. Mia is not stupid. She is not naive in a simple way. She is a teenager experiencing the intoxicating feeling of being wanted by someone charming, and that feeling does real things to a person's ability to think clearly. As the lessons continue, the relationship between Mia and Clarisse grows more complex and more genuinely warm. This is the center of the film, far more than the romance, far more than the school drama, and the film knows it. Every scene between Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews is an opportunity for both actresses to do something extraordinary, and they do not waste a single one. There is a scene roughly in the middle of the film where the lessons for the day are over and both of them are tired and a little off their guard, and they end up sitting together in one of the consulate gardens with cups of tea, and they just talk. Not about princess things, not about Genovia or protocol or how to hold a fork. They just talk. And in this scene, for the first time, both of them completely stop performing for each other. Clarisse talks about Philip. She talks about him as a person, not as a crown prince, not as an abstract figure, but as someone she knew and loved and lost. She talks about what he was like as a small boy and as a young man. She talks about the ways he was like Mia, the humor and the honesty, and the tendency to lead with the heart before the head. And as she talks, you see something in her face that she usually keeps very carefully controlled, and that is grief. She misses her son. She has been missing him, and she has been doing it with the same precision and containment she brings to everything else. But sitting here with the daughter he left behind, she allows a little of it to show. Mia, who is a genuinely empathetic person, even when she is overwhelmed by everything around her, responds to this with complete sincerity. She does not know what to say exactly, but she does not need to. She is simply present with Clarisse in a way that nobody in Clarisse's formal royal life is usually able to be, and Clarisse feels it. Julie Andrews has spoken about this scene in interviews. She said that the scene was the key to her understanding of Clarisse, that everything about the Queen made sense to her once she understood that Clarisse was carrying real grief and had been carrying it for a long time. The formality and the precision and the control all became not coldness but protection. Clarisse was protecting herself from the full weight of what she had lost by being very careful about everything. Getting to know Mia starts to lower those protections, which is both wonderful and slightly terrifying for someone who has relied on them for so long. Anne Hathaway responds to this in her performance with something very specific and very right. Mia does not try to fix Clarisse's grief. She does not rush to say the right thing. She simply sits with it. For a girl who is usually in motion, usually knocked sideways by the world, this moment of stillness with her grandmother is itself a kind of growth. She is learning to be present. Joe is always nearby during these sequences, watching with the quiet attention of someone who has known Clarisse for a very long time. Hector Elizondo plays these observation moments with enormous subtlety. Joe sees Clarisse opening up in ways she does not usually open up, and his response to it is not protective concern but quiet joy. He is glad. He is glad that Mia is getting through to her in ways that Joe himself has wanted to get through for years. The subplot between Joe and Clarisse is never the center of any scene in the film, but it enriches every scene it touches. These are two people who have been in each other's lives for decades, who clearly care for each other deeply, who have maintained a very specific professional and personal boundary all that time, and who are both too proper and too careful to name what they actually feel. The film lets this sit in the background, occasionally bringing it gently forward, and then in the final act gives it a small and lovely resolution. One of the most purely entertaining sequences in the film involves Mia attending a formal dinner at the consulate. This is meant to be a practice run for the kind of formal event she will need to navigate as a princess. The dinner is a real affair, with other guests, with full formal table settings, with the whole apparatus of royal entertainment. Mia arrives dressed appropriately and manages to get through the receiving line without any significant incident, which feels like progress. She is seated at the table and the dinner begins, and for a little while everything goes surprisingly well. She uses the right fork. She maintains appropriate conversation. She sits correctly. She is almost doing it. And then everything goes wrong simultaneously. The precise sequence of events that unfolds in the next several minutes of screen time is a masterpiece of escalating physical comedy. One thing goes wrong. In the process of addressing that one thing, another thing goes wrong. The attempt to address that second thing causes a third thing to go wrong. And by the time the sequence reaches its peak, Mia has managed to involve multiple other dinner guests in the chaos, knock over something she should not have knocked over, cause a small but memorable scene, and end up in a position that would be photographed and appear in the newspapers the next morning. Garry Marshall choreographs this sequence with the skill of someone who has been making physical comedy for decades. The timing is precise, the escalation is perfect. Each beat lands and then immediately sets up the next beat without pausing long enough to lose momentum. It is the kind of sequence that makes you laugh and then immediately feel for the person it is happening to, which is the exact emotional texture the film is looking for. Clarisse's response to the disaster is handled with wonderful delicacy. She is disappointed. She is clearly working hard to contain that disappointment within her usual formal composure. But she does not explode. She does not humiliate Mia. She waits until they are alone and then she talks to Mia quietly and specifically about what went wrong and what will need to be different. She does this the way someone does it when they are committed to the person's success, not when they are just performing authority. And crucially, Mia is listening. Even when the lesson is hard to receive, Mia is listening. Because somewhere in the course of these lessons, Mia has started to actually care about what Clarisse thinks of her. Not just because Clarisse is her grandmother and the queen of a country, but because she has begun to see Clarisse as a person worth caring about. And when people we care about are disappointed in us, it lands differently than when strangers are. The beach scene is one of the most pivotal in the film, and it deserves a very full treatment because it is the moment when several of the film's central themes crystallize simultaneously. Josh has been building toward this for some time. He has been cultivating his relationship with Mia with what appears to be genuine interest and warmth. He suggests they go to a beach gathering together, a casual event with a group of people from school. Mia agrees. She is excited. She tells nobody at home where she is going. She just goes. The beach gathering is loud and social and exactly the kind of event that Mia would not have been invited to 2 months ago. She is there now. She is part of this world now, or at least adjacent to it. And Josh is attentive and charming, and she feels for the duration of the event like she has finally arrived somewhere she was supposed to be. And then the photograph happens. Josh engineers a moment. It is subtle enough that you might miss it on a first viewing. He positions himself and Mia in a specific place. He creates a moment of closeness between them. And somewhere nearby, out of sight but not far away, a photographer is waiting for exactly this shot. The photograph captures them kissing and it goes everywhere. The morning after the beach, the photograph is in every newspaper, every entertainment outlet. Every gossip site that existed in 2001, and gossip sites were already a significant cultural force by then. The Princess of Genovia, previously unknown to the world, has been revealed. She is 15 years old. She lives in San Francisco. She goes to high school there, and she was photographed kissing a boy at a beach party. The fallout is immediate and enormous. Media vehicles appear outside the firehouse. Photographers are at the school gates. Students at Grove High are suddenly very aware of who Mia Thermopolis is and what that means. The comfortable, quiet life that Mia has been living, even the slightly more visible version she has been living since the princess lessons began, is over. She is now fully, publicly, unavoidably known. And Josh is delighted. That is the key moment. When Mia sees how Josh responds to all of this, the pleasure he takes in the attention, the way he talks about it to other people, the way he is already getting social capital from being the boy who kissed the princess, she understands. Not all at once. The understanding comes in stages. But it comes. He did not want her. He wanted what being near her could do for him. The kiss was a performance for a camera he knew was there. Eric von Detten plays this with exactly the right lightness of hand. Josh is not a villain. He is not a bad person in a dramatic sense. He is just someone who is entirely focused on what things can do for him, who saw an opportunity and took it without much thought for what it cost the person he took it from. He is ordinary in his selfishness, which in many ways makes it worse than a dramatic act of cruelty would be. Mia's hurt at the realization of what Josh did is real and specific. Anne Hathaway plays it not as anger, which would be easier to perform and more cinematically familiar, but as a kind of sad deflation. The thing she wanted to be true, that she was chosen for herself, turns out to have been chosen for what she could provide. That experience is not unique to Mia Thermopolis. It is familiar to almost anyone who has ever been in a situation where they wanted very much to be seen and found out they were being used instead. When the photograph breaks the story of Mia's identity, Lilly finds out along with everyone else. She does not hear it from Mia. She sees it in the newspaper. She hears it from the people at school who are suddenly buzzing with the information. And that is the part that hurts. Lilly is not hurt because Mia is a princess. She does not care about titles or royalty. Lilly would find the whole princess business slightly suspect anyway, given her general politics. She is hurt because her best friend has been carrying something enormous and chose not to share it. She is hurt because the intimacy she thought they had, the complete mutual honesty that defined their friendship, turns out to have had a significant exception in it. Heather Matarazzo plays Lily's reaction with honesty. She is not melodramatic. She is not performing a reaction for an audience. She is genuinely hurt and she lets Mia see that she is genuinely hurt. She tells Mia that the problem is not the secret. The problem is that she felt like she could not trust Mia with it. And that is a specific and accurate analysis that Mia cannot really argue with. Their friendship goes into a cold period during the second act of the film. They are not enemies. They are just not close in the way they were. And that distance is its own kind of pain for both of them. Mia is already overwhelmed by everything else, and the loss of her closest friend on top of all of it is very hard to carry. She goes to school and Lily is not quite there for her in the way she usually is. And every time she needs Lily, she runs into the wall she helped build. This is one of the areas where the film is most psychologically accurate about how friendship works between teenage girls. It does not give Lily an overly dramatic response. It does not make Lily cruel or villainous about the betrayal. It just shows what a genuine friendship looks like when trust is broken, which is not a violent rupture but a quiet withdrawal. The warmth that was always there becomes slightly rationed. The ease is replaced by careful politeness. And careful politeness between people who were once completely easy with each other is its own kind of pain. The film handles the experience of sudden unwanted public attention with real honesty and some genuine comedy. The morning after the photograph appears, Mia leaves the firehouse for school and there are photographers outside. She gets into the car that Joe is now driving her in and there are more photographers following the car. She arrives at school and the students are all looking at her differently. This sequence does something important. It shows us that being seen, which Mia has always wanted in theory, is a fundamentally different experience depending on why you are being seen and who is doing the seeing. Being seen because you are a princess, because you are a news story, because you are photographed in an unexpected moment, is nothing like being seen because someone genuinely knows you and values you. The attention Mia is suddenly receiving is entirely about what she is, not who she is. And that distinction is the whole movie in miniature. Mia is photographed getting her lunch. She is photographed tripping on the sidewalk. She is photographed adjusting her hair. She is photographed in the car. Every ordinary moment of her ordinary life is now documentary evidence of what it looks like when a princess does ordinary things, which is a completely bizarre and dehumanizing experience for a 15-year-old girl who just wanted to be noticed. Clarisse handles the media situation with the authority of someone who has dealt with it all her life. She does not panic. She does not chase the story or try to control it with aggression. She simply proceeds with dignity and expects the same from Mia. But she also makes clear to Mia in one of their conversations during this period that the attention will not go away. This is part of what it means to be royal. It is part of the bargain. You live your life partly in public because the public has a stake in who you are. Learning to manage that is one of the things they will work on together. For Mia, this is genuinely alarming information. She did not sign up for this. She was not told at the beginning of all this that accepting the title would mean accepting permanent public scrutiny. She is beginning to understand the full weight of what she is being asked to take on, and the understanding is not making the decision easier. The second act of the Princess Diaries is about pressure. It is about all the various forces in Mia's life pressing on her simultaneously and what happens when a person has not yet developed the inner resources to manage that kind of pressure. She is still going to the Consulate. The lessons continue and in fact intensify as the formal ball at which the announcement must be made draws closer. Clarisse needs Mia to be ready. The lessons are no longer just about deportment. They are about actual governance. They are about Genovia's history and political situation. They are about what it means to be a hereditary monarch in the modern world, what the responsibilities are, what the expectations are, what the country needs from its royal family. This material is harder for Mia than the walking lessons. It is harder because it is real. It is harder because it forces her to think about Genovia as a place with actual people in it who would be affected by her decision rather than as an abstract concept attached to her inconvenient bloodline. Meanwhile, at school, the social landscape has shifted in complicated ways. Mia is suddenly someone. People who never knew her name know her name now. People who never spoke to her speak to her now. Some of this attention is genuine curiosity, and some of it is social opportunism. And Mia, who has never had to navigate any kind of popularity before, does not always know how to tell the difference. The section of the film that deals with Mia's brief flirtation with popularity is handled with a lot of honesty. The film does not say that popularity is bad or that the people offering it are necessarily terrible. It just shows that popularity given for the wrong reasons does not feel like what you thought it would feel like. Mia is being included in things because she is a princess, not because anyone has suddenly discovered who she actually is, and she knows this even when she tries not to. The popular world is bright and loud and it wants something from her, and it does not feel like home. The contrast with her real life, with Lilly and Michael and the firehouse and Fat Louis, is very pointed. Her real life is smaller and quieter and less impressive to the outside world, but it is real in a way that the social world she has been briefly swept into is not. Michael continues to be a steady presence. He does not seek her out in a showy way. He is just there, and when he is there, he is entirely himself. He asks her about things he knows she cares about. He makes her laugh with the specific humor that she has always found funny, rather than the performing kind of humor that people use when they want to be noticed. He is completely without agenda. There is a specific scene in this section where Michael plays Mia something on his guitar. It is a song he has written. He plays it quietly, almost casually, like it is not a big deal, and the song is about her. It describes her in a way that is so specific and so accurate and so full of genuine affection that it is devastating in the gentlest possible way. Mia does not fully register what it means in this moment. She is too overwhelmed by everything else. But we register it. The audience registers it. And the song sits there in the film as a quiet declaration of something real in a story that is full of things that are pretending to be real. The preparations for the formal ball continue. This event is being held in the Genovian Consulate in San Francisco, and it is the occasion at which Mia will announce her decision to the assembled guests, who will include dignitaries and members of the press and various important people from Genovia and the broader diplomatic world. If she accepts, she will accept publicly. If she declines, she will decline publicly. Either way, there is no going back from this event. Clarisse makes clear the stakes for Genovia. The country is in a delicate situation. Without a clear line of succession, questions about the future of the monarchy are being raised. There are political interests that would benefit from the end of the Rinaldi line. Genovia needs Mia not just symbolically but practically, as a stabilizing presence in a complicated situation. The country's well being is genuinely connected to what Mia decides. This is an enormous weight to place on a 15-year-old girl, and the film does not pretend otherwise. Mia feels it. We see her feeling it in every scene during this section. The comic lightness of the early lessons has given way to something heavier and more serious, and Anne Hathaway carries that shift with complete conviction. The low point of the film arrives in stages. The Josh situation resolves badly. The Lilly situation remains cold. The public attention continues to be overwhelming. And then Mia goes to Clarisse and tells her that she cannot do it. This scene is one of the most emotionally complex in the film. Mia is not being dramatic. She is not performing a crisis. She has genuinely thought about this as carefully as a 15-year-old under enormous pressure can think about something. And she has concluded that she is not the right person. She does not have what this requires. She does not have the grace or the composure or the understanding of what it means to be royal. She has tried and she has knocked things over and she has been photographed looking ridiculous and she has hurt her best friend and she is exhausted. She just wants her life back. Clarisse listens to all of this. Her face during this scene is extraordinarily controlled, but there are things happening underneath the control that Julie Andrews communicates without ever fully showing. She is grieving. She is grieving Mia's departure from the role before she even fully arrived in it. She is grieving Philippe again, because Mia's refusal means the end of the Rinaldi line in a practical sense. She is grieving the relationship she thought she was building with her granddaughter, which is now apparently not going to continue. All of this is happening underneath the composure, and none of it comes fully to the surface. She tells Mia that she understands. She begins to make arrangements to leave San Francisco. She does this with complete dignity and without any attempt to guilt Mia or change her mind through emotional pressure. And this, paradoxically, is the moment that begins to change Mia's mind. Because the woman who accepts her decision with grace and asks nothing of her is also the woman she has been learning to love over the past weeks. And watching her start to leave is different from thinking about her leaving in the abstract. Mia retreats to the firehouse. She sits with Fat Louis. She sits with her thoughts. And she finds her father's letter. The letter was left for her by Philippe before his death. Helen has been holding it, waiting for the right moment to give it to Mia, and the right moment has apparently arrived because she quietly puts it in Mia's room without making a big thing of it. Mia opens the letter and reads it. We do not see the full contents of the letter all at once. The film parcels it out the way Mia reads it, slowly taking it in piece by piece. Her father's voice, which she never really knew, comes through in the words. He writes with warmth and honesty. He writes about Genovia and what it means to him. He writes about her, about who he believes she is and who he believes she can become. He writes about courage. He writes that he knows she might be afraid of this and that fear is completely reasonable and completely normal. But he also writes that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more than the fear. This line is the turning point of the entire film. It is the moment when everything that Mia has been running from, both the visibility she always feared and the responsibility she is being asked to take on, gets reframed. Courage is not about not being afraid. She is going to be afraid. She is going to be afraid for a long time, probably for the rest of her life in various ways. But her father is telling her that she can choose to step forward anyway. That the fear does not have to win. That there is something worth being braver than your fear for. And Mia has found that something. Not a country, not a title, not a political situation she barely understands. She has found it in Clarisse, in the relationship they have built together over these weeks, in the woman her grandmother turns out to be underneath the crown. She has found it in her father's words. She has found it in herself, in the parts of herself that have been visible to everyone around her, even when they were not visible to her. The third act of the Princess Diaries moves quickly and with great emotional clarity. The decisions have been made. Now it is about carrying them out. Mia goes to Clarisse. Clarisse is in the process of final arrangements for departure, and she is doing this with the same impeccable composure she brings to everything else. When Mia arrives, Clarisse turns to receive her without showing anything on her face, because she does not know what Mia is about to say and she is not going to let herself hope too hard and risk the disappointment. Mia tells her she has decided to accept the throne. Clarisse's response is one of the most beautiful moments in the film. It is not a dramatic explosion of joy, it is quieter and more real than that. Something in her face simply releases. The control stays in place, but underneath it there is a movement, an opening, like a door that has been held shut by great effort, is allowed to stand open for just a moment. She says something very simple and quiet. And then she straightens again and begins thinking about what comes next, about the ball and the announcement and the preparations. But Mia stops her, because there is something she wants to say that is not about preparations. She wants Clarisse to know why she made this decision. She tells her. She says it is partly because of her father and partly because she understands now what responsibility means and what it means to be willing to put yourself in that difficult place for the sake of others. But she also says that it is partly because of Clarisse herself, because of who Clarisse turned out to be when Mia got to know her. Because of the relationship that grew between them over these weeks that Mia does not want to lose. This is the scene where the film earns all of its warmth. The real story of the Princess Diaries is not a girl becoming a princess. It is a grandmother and a granddaughter, strangers to each other, finding their way to genuine love. And in this scene, that love is named. Not with great drama, not with enormous declarations, but quietly and truly. Clarisse, who has been composed throughout the conversation, allows herself a moment of genuine visible feeling here. Julie Andrews is extraordinary in it. 40 years of craft in the service of a completely simple and real moment. She looks at Mia and she sees Philippe and she sees her own younger self and she sees something entirely new that is only Mia, and all of it is there in her face at once. Now they have to make the announcement. The reconciliation with Lilly comes first. Mia goes to Lilly and she does not arrive with excuses or explanations. She arrives with honesty. She tells Lilly that she was wrong to keep the secret. She tells her that the friendship is the most important thing and that she let fear of change make her a less good friend than Lilly deserved. She does not ask Lilly to immediately forgive her. She just says what is true. Lilly listens. And then she says something that is perfectly Lilly. She says that she knew something was wrong and she is annoyed that she was not told. And she is also not surprised that Mia is a princess, because honestly, only a princess would be as absent minded as Mia has always been, which is not at all a logical argument, but which communicates clearly that they are going to be okay. The warmth comes back, the ease comes back, and the friendship resumes on slightly more honest terms than it had before, which makes it stronger. Michael is the last piece. Before the ball, he finds Mia. Their conversation is quiet and a little nervous on both sides, which feels exactly right. Michael has been carrying what he feels about Mia for the whole film, and the moment when he finally says some of it is not performed with great dramatic flourish. It is just two people being honest with each other about something they have been avoiding being honest about. He tells her that he has always thought she was remarkable. He tells her that the princess thing does not change how he sees her. He tells her that she was already remarkable before. This is not a long speech. It does not need to be. The sincerity in Robert Schwartzman's performance does everything necessary, and Mia, hearing it, understands fully and finally the difference between what Josh offered her and what Michael is offering. One was about what she could give him, the other is about who she actually is. The formal ball is held at the Genovian Consulate, and it is a genuinely beautiful sequence. The production design for this event is the most lavish in the film, all candlelight and flowers and elegant formal wear and the atmosphere of a world that does things with great ceremony. It is a fairy tale setting in the most literal sense, and it knows it. Mia arrives and she looks extraordinary. Her appearance at this point in the film is not extraordinary because Paolo did something to her hair or because the wardrobe team put her in the right gown, though both of those things are true. She is extraordinary because she has made a decision that she believes in, and it shows. There is something in how she carries herself that is different from any previous scene. She is not holding herself differently for formal reasons. She is holding herself like someone who knows where she stands. She moves through the room with a composure that she did not have at the formal dinner, but it is not the composed she learned from lessons. It is the composed that comes from having decided something important and being at peace with it. Garry Marshall photographs this arrival with real attention, letting the camera follow Mia as she enters the space and letting the space respond to her. Clarisse is there, resplendent and perfect as always, but with something different in her eyes when she sees Mia. A pride that is deeper than the formal kind. A pride that has nothing to do with whether the wave is right or the posture is correct. She watches her granddaughter enter this room and she is proud in the way that people are proud when they have seen someone grow into themselves. Joe is beside Clarisse as always. Hector Elizondo's Joe, at this point in the film, is quietly radiant with something. He knows about the reconciliation. He knows about Mia's decision. He has watched these two people, whom he clearly loves in different ways, find their way to each other. And he is simply glad. The moment before the speech is where the film concentrates all of its accumulated tension. Mia is standing at the side of the room with Clarisse. The announcement is about to be made. The press is there. The dignitaries are there. The cameras are there. Everything that has happened over the course of this film has been leading to this single moment of standing up in front of everyone and speaking. Clarisse looks at her and says something very simple. She says she is proud, not of what Mia has decided or what Mia is about to do, just of Mia, of who she is. That simple declaration is the best possible thing she could say, and it is the best possible thing to take into the speech. Mia walks to the microphone. The room quiets. She speaks. She does not use the formal language of royal speeches. She does not speak in the careful diplomatic phrases that Clarisse might have used. She speaks the way Mia speaks, which is to say, she speaks directly and honestly and with the specific warmth that has been the defining characteristic of who she is from the very first frame of the film. She talks about Genovia. She talks about the responsibility she is taking on and what she intends to do with it. She talks about using this platform, this strange, unexpected platform that came to her completely without her asking for it, to do something good in the world. She says that she has learned something over these past weeks, and what she has learned is that courage is not about not being afraid. It is about deciding that something matters more than the fear. The room responds. Not with polite formal applause, but with genuine warmth. Because what Mia is offering in this speech is not just a princess, it is a person. A real, specific, imperfect, deeply human person who is choosing to step up and be responsible for something larger than herself. And that is genuinely inspiring regardless of the context. Clarisse is watching from the side of the room. The camera finds her face during the speech and holds on it for a long moment. What is there in her expression is almost too much for the frame to hold. It is grief and love and pride and something like relief and something like joy and something that has no name and is probably all of them at once. Julie Andrews has said in interviews that she thought about Philip during this scene, about what he would have felt watching his daughter in this moment. And whatever she was thinking, it is there. After the speech, as the room fills with the sound of people responding warmly and joyfully to what they have just heard, there is a quiet moment between Clarisse and Joe. They are standing together as they always are, and Joe says something to Clarisse that we do not fully hear, and Clarisse turns to him with an expression that is completely open in a way we have not seen her be open before, and something is resolved between them that has been waiting to be resolved for a very long time. It is brief and it is quiet and it is perfect. And then there is Mia and Michael. They find each other in the crowd and for a moment they are just standing there, both of them slightly nervous, both of them completely aware of what the other is feeling. Mia says something. Michael says something back, and then there is a moment between them, not a grand cinematic kiss, not a dramatic declaration, but something true and beginning and full of possibility. The film does not show us the end of this story. It shows us the beginning of the next one. Mia is going to Genovia. She is going for the first time to the country that is half of who she is. She is going as its princess. She is going as herself. The final sequence of the film is brief and carefully chosen in what it includes and what it does not include. There is no lengthy epilogue. There is no scene setting for what Genovia will be like. There is no resolution of every thread that has been left open. The film trusts its audience to believe in what it has established. We see Mia in a car, clearly on her way to the airport. She has her things. She has Fat Louis in a carrier. She has the people she loves around her in various ways, her mother having sent her off with warmth and humor and real maternal love, Lilly having said goodbye in the way that only Lilly can say goodbye, which is with a great deal of specificity about all the things Mia should remember and do and not do and make sure to report back about. And then there is the final image, Mia rolling down the window, leaning out into the San Francisco air, letting the city she has always lived in blow through her as she heads somewhere completely new. And she is laughing, not performing happiness. Not being photographed laughing, just genuinely, freely, privately laughing at the sheer, wild, unexpected beauty of what her life has turned out to be. It is the right ending. It is the only possible ending. Not a perfect conclusion, but a perfect beginning. She is still the same girl. She will still knock things over and talk too fast and have too much feeling about everything. But she is no longer hiding any of it. She is leaning out the window and letting the world see her, and she is completely unafraid. Character analysis. To truly understand the Princess Diaries and what makes it work as deeply as it does, you have to understand Mia Thermopolis at a very specific level. Not just what she does in the film, but why she is the way she is, what shaped her before the story began, and what the story actually changes in her. Mia is 15 years old and she is the child of a complicated situation. Her parents separated when she was very young. Her father was a prince of a small European country who returned to his duties and his country. Her mother was an American artist who stayed in San Francisco and raised her daughter with great love and complete commitment. Mia grew up in a warm and creative home, but she also grew up without her father, without that specific presence, without the full picture of who she is. This absence matters to the story more than it might initially seem. Mia does not talk about it much. She does not perform grief about her father or make his absence into a dramatic defining wound. But it is there in the background of everything. She does not fully know who she is because she has only ever known half of where she comes from. And then, suddenly, the other half appears in the form of a grandmother she never knew, a title she never wanted, and a letter from a father she never got to know. The invisibility that Mia has chosen is not simply social awkwardness, it is a strategy. She has decided, consciously or not, that being invisible is safer than being seen. Being seen means being judged. Being judged means the possibility of being found lacking. And for someone who is already missing half of her story, already uncertain about her own foundations, the risk of being found lacking is unbearable. Better to be invisible. Better to take up as little space as possible and avoid the judgment entirely. This is why the discovery of her royal identity is so specifically difficult for her, because it is not just about adding a title to her name. It is about becoming visible in the most dramatic and unavoidable way. It is about being found, claimed, made significant, put in the light, when everything in her has been arranged around staying out of the light. But here is what the film understands about Mia that elevates it above a simple makeover story. The visibility that terrifies her is also what she has always secretly wanted. She wants to matter. She wants to be significant to the people around her. She wants to be chosen, genuinely chosen, for who she is rather than accidentally overlooked. The invisibility was never what she wanted, it was what felt safe. And safety is not the same as what we want. Anne Hathaway was 19 during production, and she brings to the role something that is genuinely unusual, which is a complete absence of performer's vanity. She does not manage the role from a distance of technique. She does not maintain any protective irony. She is completely in it, completely present, completely willing to be Mia in the fullest possible sense. The physical comedy is real because she is genuinely committing to all of it. The emotional moments are real because she is not protecting herself from them. This quality of complete openness, of being entirely available to whatever the scene requires, is the essential thing that makes the performance work. The arc of the character is not about becoming something she was not, it is about becoming more fully what she already was. The grace she develops is not Paulo's grace or Clarisse's grace. It is a grace specific to Mia, which includes tripping over things occasionally and laughing at herself when she does and continuing anyway. The confidence she develops is not the confidence of someone who has gotten everything right. It is the confidence of someone who has decided that she is worth trying even when she gets things wrong. That is a much more interesting kind of confidence and a much more useful kind. Queen Clarisse Rinaldi is one of the great supporting characters in the genre because she is written and performed with a complexity that the role did not strictly require, but that makes the film immeasurably richer. The simplest version of Clarisse would have been a formal, slightly cold authority figure who gradually thaws as she gets to know Mia. That is a perfectly serviceable character for a film like this. But the Clarisse that Julie Andrews creates is something more interesting. She is not simply cold, she is protected. There is a significant difference. Cold implies indifference. Protected implies that there was once something warm enough to need protecting. What is Clarisse protecting? Several things. She is protecting herself from grief, which we have discussed. She has lost her son and she carries that loss with enormous careful control. She is protecting herself from the vulnerability that comes with genuinely caring about people in a role where everything you do is public and scrutinized. She has been a queen for decades and she has learned through experience and probably through painful experience that allowing herself to be seen, caring too much about specific people, creates specific vulnerabilities. She is also, in some sense, protecting herself from Joe. Because Clarisse's feelings for Joe are clearly deep and clearly long standing and clearly not entirely appropriate to the professional relationship they have always maintained. And allowing those feelings to become visible, even to herself, would require a kind of personal risk that she has carefully avoided. Being a queen is a very good excuse for not allowing yourself to love someone in the messy, uncurated way that love requires. Julie Andrews plays all of this without ever making it explicit. It lives in the containment of her performance, in the moments of almost expression that pass across her face before the composer reasserts itself, in the specific way she looks at Joe when she thinks nobody is watching. It is a completely interior performance layered over an exterior that is all dignity and authority, and the layering is what gives the character its depth. The transformation that Clarisse undergoes through the film is the mirror of Mia's transformation, and this parallel is one of the most elegant structural choices the screenplay makes. Both of them are moving toward greater openness. Both of them are learning to be seen more fully. Mia is learning to step forward and be visible where she has always hidden. Clarisse is learning to lower her defenses and allow genuine connection where she has always been very careful. By the end of the film, Clarisse has done several things she would not have done at the beginning. She has allowed Mia to see her vulnerable. She has allowed herself to grieve Philippe in the presence of another person. She has allowed her affection for Mia to become visible and named. And she has allowed Joe to become something more than a professional relationship. Each of these openings is a real act of courage for someone who has spent decades keeping all of them closed. The scene at the end of the film where Clarisse watches Mia give her speech is one of the most beautifully observed character moments in the film, precisely because it is so interior. Nothing Clarisse says is extraordinary. Everything she feels is, and Julie Andrews gives us access to all of that feeling through the most controlled and perfect performance. Lily Moscovitz is in some ways the most purely enjoyable character in the Princess Diaries because she is the character who has the most freedom. She is not the protagonist navigating a major life upheaval. She is not the authority figure managing a succession crisis. She is not the love interest developing careful feelings. She is just Lily, with her television show and her strong opinions and her fierce loyalty to the people she loves. What makes Lily work as a character, beyond Heather Matrazo's tremendous performance, is that she is right about almost everything. Her instincts about Josh are right. Her instincts about what Mia needs are right. Her analysis of the social situations she and Mia navigate is consistently accurate. She is the kind of person who sees through things very quickly and states what she sees without much diplomatic softening. This quality is both her greatest strength and the source of the complexity in her relationship with Mia. Because being friends with someone who is always right, who always calls it accurately, who cannot be diplomatically wrong in the service of making you feel better, is its own kind of challenge. Mia loves Lily and trusts her implicitly, but she also sometimes needs to make her own mistakes without Lily's accurate analysis, waiting to be told that she knew. The friendship requires both of them to navigate this dynamic continuously. The hurt Lily feels when the secret is revealed is completely genuine, and the film treats it with full respect. Lily is not being unreasonable. She is not being oversensitive. She was excluded from something major by someone she thought excluded nothing from her. The friendship they had was defined by total honesty, and Mia chose to violate that definition, whatever her reasons were. Lily has the right to be hurt by this, and she is clearly and simply. But the reconciliation also feels right, because Lily's fundamental commitment is to Mia. She can be angry with Mia. She can withdraw warmth when she is hurt. She can hold Mia accountable with complete precision. But she cannot stop being Mia's friend when it comes down to it because their friendship is not contingent on Mia being perfect. It is contingent on Mia being genuinely who she is, which includes sometimes making mistakes and being willing to own them honestly. The moment when Lily forgives Mia is not performed as a dramatic scene. It is quick and real and slightly funny, which is exactly how genuine reconciliations often work. Two people who love each other do not need a big scene to come back together. They just need a moment of honest acknowledgement and then they can keep going. Michael Moskowitz is the character in the film who does the least and matters the most. He does not have grand gestures. He does not have major confrontations. He does not drive the plot in any significant way. He just appears consistently, treating Mia with complete genuine care, and lets everything else unfold. This is actually a very difficult character to play well because there is nothing to hide behind. An actor playing Michael cannot rely on high emotional intensity or dramatic moments to convey who the character is. Everything must be communicated through small, consistent choices, through the way he listens and the way he speaks and the way he occupies space in Mia's life without demanding anything of that space. Robert Schwartzman does this beautifully. Michael is completely himself in every scene. He does not adapt himself to whatever situation he is in. He does not perform differently for different audiences. He is just Michael, steady and warm and quietly funny and genuinely interested in the people around him. The song he writes for Mia is the most explicit expression of who Michael is in the film. He writes a song because that is how he processes and expresses what he feels. He writes it about Mia because she is the person he feels it about. He plays it for her without making a big thing of it because his affection for her is not a performance he is putting on. It is just true. The contrast with Josh is completely deliberate and very effective. Josh approaches Mia with a calculation that he disguises as spontaneity. He wants something from the situation and he engineers the situation to get it. Michael approaches Mia with no calculation at all. He does not want anything from the situation other than whatever is real between them. If nothing is real, he will be sad about that and he will still be her friend. His interest in her is not contingent on getting anything back. By the end of the film, the quiet beginning that emerges between Mia and Michael feels like the most natural development in the world because it has been building honestly and without manipulation from the first moment he appeared on screen. Their relationship does not resolve into a big romantic declaration. It resolves into a beginning which is exactly right for two people who are both still figuring out who they are and what they want. The Princess Diaries operates on several thematic levels simultaneously and they all reinforce each other in ways that feel elegant rather than overcrowded. The central theme is courage and self acceptance. This is not a subtle theme and the film does not try to hide it. From the opening scene where Mia promises Fat Louis she is going to be more visible today to the final speech where she stands in front of a room full of people and speaks as herself. Every beat of the story is about learning to be brave enough to be who you actually are. What makes this theme work is that the film is very specific about what courage means and what it does not mean. Courage in this film is not the absence of fear. Mia never stops being afraid. She is afraid when she walks into the consulate for the first lesson. She is afraid when she gives the speech at the end. She will probably always be afraid in some measure of the things she cares about. The film is explicit through her father's letter that this is fine. Courage is not being afraid. It is deciding to act anyway. The theme of identity is woven through every element of the film. Who is Mia? This question is asked in multiple ways throughout the story, and different characters give different answers. Clarisse says she is the princess of Genovia. The media says she is a celebrity. Josh says she is a prize. Lilly says she is her best friend. Michael says she is remarkable. And Mia, by the end of the film, says she is all of it and none of it and specifically herself. The film is also about class and authenticity, though it handles this theme more gently than it might. Mia's world is bohemian and informal. The royal world is formal and structured. There is a question throughout the film about whether accepting the formal world means abandoning the informal one. And the film's answer is that it does not have to. Mia can be a princess without erasing herself. She can bring her specific, informal, authentic self into the formal world, and the formal world will be better for having her in it. The theme of family is central in a way that is less obvious than the others. The Princess Diaries is fundamentally a story about three generations of family finding each other. Philip's death set everything in motion. His relationship with Helen gave them Mia. His mother Clarisse spent years without knowing her granddaughter, and now, through this strange royal complication, they are finding each other. The family that assembles over the course of this film is unconventional and arrived at in an unusual way, but it is real and it is full of genuine love. The theme of love in its various forms runs throughout. There is the love between Mia and Helen, which is warm and constant, and the bedrock of Mia's ability to function at all. There is a developing love between Mia and Clarisse, found rather than given, earned through honesty and vulnerability. There is the friendship love between Mia and Lilly, tested and proven real. There is the quiet beginning of romantic love between Mia and Michael, and there is the long established but carefully unnamed love between Clarisse and Joe. All of these loves exist simultaneously, and the film holds them all with equal tenderness. The theme of duty versus desire is present, but the film does not dramatize it as a conflict because it is not interested in making duty seem like a burden. Instead, the film argues that when you understand what duty actually is, when you understand that it means being responsible for something larger than yourself in the service of real people who need you, the desire to do it well and the duty to do it well become the same thing. Mia does not accept the throne despite wanting something else. She accepts it because she has come to want it, because she has understood what it means and why it matters. The firehouse home is the richest symbol in the film and it rewards close attention. A firehouse is a building that exists to serve others, to respond to crises, to protect the community. It has been converted into a private home, a space for art and personal life. This conversion mirrors the arc of the story. Mia begins in the private world, the converted personal space. By the end, she is stepping back into something that resembles the original function of the building, choosing public service and responsibility. She is unconverting herself, or rather, she is integrating both functions. The flag in front of Mia's locker is one of the film's most elegant visual metaphors. It is a flag of the country which represents the public world, standing in the way of Mia accessing her own private belongings. Public life literally blocking her access to herself. As the film progresses, this obstruction becomes less central to her experience. She is not defined by the flag anymore. She is stepping out from behind it. Fat Louis the cat is comfort and constancy. In a film where everything changes rapidly and dramatically, Fat Louis never changes. He is always warm and present and indifferent to everything happening around him in the way that cats are wonderfully indifferent. He represents the core of Mia's life that remains stable underneath all the transformation, the essential self that no amount of princess lessons or media attention or social upheaval can reach. The letter from Philippe is the film's most powerful symbol, and it works on multiple levels. On the most literal level, it is a parent communicating love and guidance to a child they will not get to know in person. On a symbolic level, it is the past reaching into the present, the voice of someone gone still shaping the choices of those who remain. On a thematic level, it is the film's clearest statement of its central message that courage is the decision that something matters more than fear, delivered in the most personal possible way. Here is a symbol throughout the film that is both obvious and deeper than it first appears. Mia's wild curly hair represents her natural, uncontrolled self. The straightened hair represents the controlled, formal version of herself that the royal role requires. The interesting thing the film does with this is that by the end, neither version is more real or more Mia than the other. The straight hair at the ball is not a mask, it is one face of who she is. The wild hair at home is another. The symbol is about integration, about being able to exist in both forms without either of them being a lie. The consulate itself is a symbol of worlds meeting. It is a European institution existing in an American city. It is formality existing inside informality. It is the past existing inside the present. Every time Mia crosses its threshold, she is crossing between two versions of herself. And the fact that by the end she can cross that threshold without losing who she is represents her complete integration of these two worlds. Filmmaking technique is Garry Marshall's direction on The Princess Diaries reflects his decades of experience making comedy with warmth at its center. He understood that this kind of story requires a light touch in the direction, that pressing too hard on any element would throw it out of balance. The most important directorial decision Marshall made was to treat the comedy and the emotion with equal respect. Many directors working in this genre would subordinate the emotional scenes to the comic ones or vice versa, making the film either funnier but shallower or more emotionally resonant but slower. Marshall refuses this choice. The comic scenes are funny because the characters are real. The emotional scenes land because the comedic scenes have established these characters fully. The two modes are not in conflict. They are in service of the same truth. Marshall also made the decision to let his actors work. He trusted Hathaway and Andrews to know what they were doing and he gave them space to do it. This is particularly visible in the quieter scenes between them, the conversations in the garden, the moments after the formal lessons are done when the women are just being people together. These scenes have a quality of things being discovered in real time rather than executed from a plan, which suggests that Marshall was allowing his actors to find things rather than directing them toward predetermined conclusions. The physical comedy sequences required precise coordination, and Marshall brought to these his extensive television background, where timing is everything and you have to be right on the first take or very close to it. The sequence at the formal dinner is almost exactly choreographed in how it builds and escalates, and yet it never feels mechanical. It feels spontaneous because Hathaway's commitment to it is total. The cinematography by Carl Walter Lindenlob is clean and bright and serves the story without calling attention to itself. This is exactly right for this kind of film. Lindenlob does not try to be visually innovative. He finds the compositions that serve the performances and the story and he executes them with precision. The camera moves are motivated by action rather than by aesthetic choices. The lighting is warm throughout, reflecting the film's emotional temperature. The San Francisco exteriors are shot with great affection. Lindenlob clearly spent time with the city and found the angles and the moments that make it look most like itself. The morning fog, the afternoon light on the Victorian houses, the particular quality of the sky over the bay. These location choices ground the film in a real and specific place, and they give it a visual richness that studio work alone could not provide. The editing by Bruce Green maintains the film's pace with skill. The film moves quickly, covering a great deal of narrative ground in its running time without ever feeling rushed. Green manages the balance between the comic sequences, which need very specific rhythmic editing to land their jokes, and the emotional sequences, which need more breathing room to achieve their effect. He finds that balance throughout, and the film benefits enormously from it. The score by John Debney is warm and playful and exactly calibrated to the story. It never pushes too hard on the emotional moments. It never underscores the comedy with excessive irony. It supports the film's tone without dominating it. The use of period pop songs throughout the film gives it a specific cultural identity and dates it precisely to 2001, which is itself a kind of charm. The production design by Mane Burke is one of the great achievements of the film. The firehouse home looks genuinely lived in. Every detail of it communicates the lives of the people who inhabit it. Helen's art is everywhere, not decorative art but working art. Art that looks like it was made by someone who makes art because they need to rather than because they are trying to look like an artist. Mia's room is full of her specific interest and her specific personality. The consulate interiors are formal and correct in ways that feel authentic rather than theatrical. Both worlds feel real, which is essential to the contrast between them working as well as it does. McCabott's novel The Princess Diaries is a first person diary narrative in which Mia documents everything that happens to her in the voice of someone who is intelligent, funny, and perpetually overwhelmed by her own life. The voice is very specific and very Mia, and it is one of the most distinctive things about the book. The film preserves some of this voice through the diary entry sequences where we hear Mia's thoughts in her own voice over brief written passages that she reads to us. These moments are well chosen and they give us access to Mia's interior in ways that the action alone cannot. But they necessarily simplify the book's deeper immersion in her perspective because a film cannot be written entirely in a character's private voice. The most significant change from novel to film is the status of Mia's father. In the novel, Philip is alive but has been rendered infertile by testicular cancer, which is why he cannot have more children and therefore why Mia is the only heir. This is a more complicated situation than a dead father, and it creates different emotional dynamics. The film's choice to make Philip dead before the story begins, to make him a ghost presence rather than a living one, serves the film's specific emotional architecture. The letter he leaves, the words that reach Mia from beyond death, are more powerful coming from someone who is gone than they would be from someone Mia could simply go talk to. The change in setting from New York to San Francisco has been discussed, but it is worth reiterating that this was one of the most successful changes the adaptation made. New York is a wonderful city for stories, but it is a very specific kind of story city. It is urban and intense and full of a particular kind of energy. San Francisco is different in ways that suit this story better. It is more dreamlike, more given to fairy tale quality, more naturally suited to the idea of hidden royalty. The development of the Michael character is much more substantial in the film than in the novel. In the book, the relationship between Mia and Michael is at an earlier stage and is more tentative. The film brings it forward and makes it more central, which is the right choice because Michael's contrast with Josh is one of the film's most important thematic elements. Without Michael as a clear counterpoint to Josh's performance of interest, the commentary on genuine versus calculated attention would not have the same clarity. Lilly in the film is also slightly different from the novel version. The novel Lilly is a little more abrasive and a little more politically driven. The film softens her edges somewhat without losing her essential quality of complete outspoken honesty. The adjustment is well judged. A slightly less abrasive Lily makes her more immediately sympathetic on screen while preserving everything that makes the character significant to the story. The formal structure of the story, the three-act movement from ordinary life to discovery to crisis to resolution, is more clearly defined in the film than in the novel. This is typical of novel to film adaptation, where the requirements of screen storytelling push toward clearer dramatic architecture. The novel has more room to meander through Mia's daily experience. The film has to be more purposeful, and it achieves that purposefulness without sacrificing the warmth that made the novel work. To appreciate the Princess Diaries fully, you have to sit with it in its moment. The year 2001 was a specific cultural moment that shaped both what stories were being told and how they were being received. In 2001, the internet was established, but social media as we know it did not yet exist. Twitter was 5 years away, Facebook was 3 years away, Instagram was almost a decade away. Celebrity culture existed through tabloids and entertainment television and the early entertainment websites. But it was nothing like the constant, omnipresent surveillance of celebrity that characterizes our current moment. This matters for the film because the media attention that Mia receives when her identity is revealed, which seems overwhelming and terrifying, would in our current moment be exponentially more overwhelming and more terrifying. The paparazzi outside the firehouse in 2001 would in 2024 be joined by a social media environment in which millions of people were generating content about Mia continuously. The film's treatment of celebrity attention is already honest and perceptive. It would be even more poignant viewed through the lens of how much worse it has become. The early 2000s was also the peak era of the teen comedy. The decade from roughly 1995 to 2005 produced an extraordinary number of films aimed at teenage audiences, particularly teenage girls, many of them centered on social dynamics, identity, romance, and the particular pressures of high school life. Clueless, She's All That, 10 Things I Hate About You, Bring It On, Mean Girls. These films formed a specific genre that The Princess Diaries fit squarely within while also gently pushing at its edges. What distinguishes The Princess Diaries from many of its genre contemporaries is the intergenerational element. Most teen comedies of this era were entirely focused on the teenage world. The relationships between generations were background at best. The Princess Diaries put the grandmother granddaughter relationship at the center, and this gave it an emotional range and depth that the pure teen comedies did not have access to. It could ask questions about duty and identity and grief and legacy that a film focused entirely on high school social dynamics simply cannot reach. The film also arrived in a cultural moment that was hungry for stories about finding yourself through unexpected circumstances. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was released in November 2001, just 3 months after The Princess Diaries. Spider Man would arrive in 2002. The early 2000s was full of stories about ordinary people discovering extraordinary things about themselves and stepping up to fulfill unexpected destinies. The Princess Diaries fit this wave perfectly and fed it, contributing to the cultural moment rather than simply reflecting it. The critical conversation around The Princess Diaries in 2001 was interesting because it revealed a certain kind of critical discomfort with films made explicitly for young female audiences. The film was frequently praised in the same breath as it was slightly condescended to, as though being a film that teenage girls adored was itself a slight qualification on its achievements. Roger Ebert gave the film a positive review, giving it 3 stars out of 4, and his review is worth examining because it captures both the film's genuine qualities and the critical attitude that both appreciated and subtly underestimated it. Ebert praised Hathaway and Andrews and the warmth of the material. He noted that the film did what it set out to do and did it well. He was not dismissive, but he was also not quite willing to claim it as anything more than a well executed example of its type. Which is fair but also slightly misses the point, because doing its type well with this degree of craft and emotional truth is not a small thing. Other critics were similarly warm and similarly measured. The consensus was that the film was charming, that the two leads were excellent, that the physical comedy was well executed, and that the story was predictable but enjoyable. These things are all true. They are also all slightly insufficient as a full accounting of what the film achieved. What the critical conversation largely missed was the quality of the emotional work being done, particularly in the relationship between Clarisse and Mia. Critics noted that Julie Andrews was good in the role. Very few of them examined in detail what she was actually doing with it, the layers of grief and protection and slowly opening warmth, or observed that this was a genuinely complex performance in service of a genuinely complex character. The tendency to see the film primarily as a light confection and to evaluate it primarily as a light confection meant that the more substantial elements within it were not given their full due. Audience reception was considerably warmer and considerably more perceptive in certain ways. Young female viewers, in particular, responded to the film with a specificity that suggested they were getting from it things that the critics were not fully identifying. The message about being brave enough to be yourself, delivered through a story about a girl who literally discovers she is secretly important, resonated with audiences who knew exactly what it felt like to feel invisible and exactly how frightening it is to step forward. The film's Rotten Tomatoes score has fluctuated over the years but has settled in the range of 68 to 70%, which represents a rough consensus of modestly positive critical reception. The audience score on the same platform is significantly higher, reflecting the gap between critical and popular response that has always characterized films in this genre and for this audience. Box Office Collection. The Princess Diaries opened on the 3rd of August 2001, a date that Disney chose carefully. Late summer is a strong period for family films when children are still on school holidays and families are looking for shared entertainment experiences. The film opened against competition, but nothing that directly targeted the same audience. The opening weekend was strong at approximately $22 million in North American theaters. This was a very healthy opening for a modest budget family comedy without a major built-in franchise or brand. It indicated strong word of mouth in advance of release and a clear audience appetite for this kind of material. The film held remarkably well in subsequent weeks. Word of mouth was excellent, particularly among the young female demographic that Disney had correctly identified as the primary audience. Girls who saw it in the opening weekend told their friends. Girls who saw it in the second week told more friends. The film played in theaters for an extended period and continued to build its audience throughout the run. The North American final total was approximately $108 million. The international gross added approximately $67 million for a worldwide total of approximately $165 million. Against a production budget of $26 million, the return was extraordinary. Even accounting for the marketing budget, which for a Disney release of this size would have been significant, the film was enormously profitable. The DVD release, which came in December 2001, continued the film's commercial success. The early 2000s was the golden age of DVD when consumers were building collections and the format was still exciting enough to drive significant sales. The Princess Diaries was exactly the kind of film that sold well on DVD, a film that young viewers wanted to own so they could watch it again and again. The DVD also introduced the film to audiences who had missed its theatrical run and contributed substantially to its cultural penetration. Disney's television broadcast rights also generated substantial revenue and audience over the years following the film's release. The Disney Channel was a natural home for the film, and its repeated broadcast there introduced it to several subsequent waves of young viewers who discovered it well after its original release, the sequel, and the franchise. Princess Diaries 2 Royal Engagement was released in August 2004, exactly 3 years after the original. The film was directed again by Garry Marshall and starred Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews, both returning to their roles. The sequel takes place 5 years after the events of the first film. Mia is now 21 years old and about to take the throne of Genovia as queen. However, she discovers that there is a Genovian law requiring the monarch to be married before the coronation. She has 30 days to find a husband or the law will be invoked to give the throne to a competing claimant, played by John Rhys Davies. The romantic plot of the sequel involves a charming young lord named Nicholas Devereux, played by Chris Pine in his film debut, who initially appears to be working against Mia, but who turns out to be a genuine love interest. The film is lighter in tone than the original, more focused on the romantic comedy elements and less on the deeper emotional themes of identity and courage that gave the first film its substance. The sequel also brought back Hector Elizondo as Joe and gave the Joe and Clarisse subplot a more prominent resolution, including a sweet and satisfying conclusion to their long-delayed romance. Critical reception to the sequel was slightly warmer than the original in some quarters and slightly cooler in others. The consensus was that it was a perfectly enjoyable entertainment that did not quite match the emotional depth of the first film, which is a fair assessment. Box office performance was solid, with the film earning approximately $134 million worldwide. The question of a third Princess Diaries film has been a consistent topic of conversation in Hollywood for more than a decade. Both Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews have spoken publicly about their willingness and interest in returning to the franchise. Makeover continued the book series for many years and provided substantial source material for additional stories. The rights to the franchise have passed to Netflix, which has been in various stages of development on a third film for several years. As of 2026, the project's status remains in development, with ongoing discussions about scripts, directors, and timing. 25 years on from its original release, The Princess Diaries occupies a specific and lasting place in the popular cultural imagination that far exceeds what its modest critical scores at the time might have suggested. For a very large generation of women who are now in their late 20s through their late 30s. The Princess Diaries is a foundational text. They watched it in theaters when they were teenagers. They watched it again on DVD. They watched it on cable television. They watched it on streaming. They have watched it with younger siblings and younger family members. They have found that it still works, that it still delivers the warmth and the humor and the emotional truth that it delivered the first time. The message the film carries that you are allowed to be visible as yourself, that invisibility is a strategy born of fear and not an identity to aspire to, that courage is the act of deciding something matters more than the fear, is not a message that ages. It is not specific to 2001. It is as applicable in 2026 as it was then, and it will be as applicable in 2046. Anne Hathaway's career in the 25 years since this film has been one of the most interesting in contemporary Hollywood. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for Les Miserables in 2013. She has done comedies and dramas and thrillers and science fiction. She has navigated the peculiar pressures of celebrity with considerable grace. She has remained throughout all of it someone whose work is engaged and fully committed in the way that her very first film role indicated she would be. Mia Thermopolis is where all of that began. Julie Andrews has said in interviews that Clarisse Rinaldi was one of her favorite roles precisely because it gave her something genuinely new to do. She had played authority figures before, played characters of great dignity, played women of strength, but the specific arc of Clarisse, the formal exterior giving way to genuine warmth, the grief carefully managed and then briefly shared, the love for Joe finally acknowledged, was a combination of things she had not done before in quite this way. And she did them with the mastery of someone who has spent 6 decades learning exactly how to do them. Garry Marshall died in 2016 at the age of 81. He had continued making films until very near the end of his life, including the Valentine's Day anthology films and Mother's Day. He was celebrated at his death as one of the warmest and most human filmmakers Hollywood had produced, someone who made films that believed in people and made audiences feel better about the world. The Princess Diaries is a perfect exemplar of everything that description encompasses. Conclusion: The Princess Diaries 2001 is, on one level, a simple film. It is a fairy tale dressed in contemporary clothes. It follows a very old structure about an ordinary person discovering they are extraordinary. It resolves in the most straightforward and satisfying way possible. Nobody is surprised by its ending. Nobody should be. But simple does not mean shallow. Simple can mean clear and true and precisely executed in the service of something that matters. And the things the Princess Diaries says through its simple and familiar structure are genuinely worth saying and saying well. It says that invisibility is not safe. It feels safe because it prevents judgment, but it also prevents being truly known. And being truly known is one of the deepest human needs. It says that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something matters more than the fear. And this is one of the most practically useful things a story can ever tell its audience. It says that the people who see you before you are visible to the world are the people who are actually worth something. It says that family can be found as well as given, that love between people who are strangers to each other at the beginning can become as deep and real as love between people who have known each other for decades. It says that transformation is not always what it looks like. Mia at the end of the film still trips over things. She still has too much feeling about everything. She still talks too fast and cares too much and is completely herself in all the ways that were always herself. What changed is not the surface. What changed is that she stopped hiding the surface. She stopped managing her own visibility. She stopped arranging things to minimize the chance of being judged. She stepped forward into the light and she found that the light was not the dangerous thing she always thought it was. The performances in the film deserve to be remembered among the best in their respective categories. Anne Hathaway's Mia Thermopolis is one of the great debut film performances, full of physical comedy and emotional openness and a quality of being completely present that marks the work of the very best actors. Julie Andrews' Clarisse Rinaldi is one of the great supporting performances in the romantic comedy genre, a character who seems at first to be one thing and turns out to be something much richer and much more worth knowing. Garry Marshall made the film that the story needed. Not a film that called attention to its own techniques, not a film that tried to be more sophisticated or more ironic than the material warranted. A film that believed completely in what it was doing and executed that belief with craft and warmth and great affection for its characters and its audience. The Princess Diaries is worth watching. It has always been worth watching. It will continue to be worth watching for as long as there are people who need to be told that they are enough. That the specific, imperfect, complete self they carry around with them is not a problem to be fixed or a source of embarrassment to be hidden, but something to be offered to the world with courage and generosity. When possible, with a little grace, Mia Thermopolis found her crown. But the crown was never the point. The point was the girl who found it, and the grandmother who found her, and the letter from a father who loved them both, and the best friend who was there for all of it, and the boy who wrote a song about who she really was before any of it happened. That is the film, that is all of it, and that is more than enough. The story begins on an ordinary morning in San Francisco with a girl talking to her cat about being brave. It ends on a car ride towards something enormous and unknown, with the same girl laughing out the window into the wind. Everything in between is the distance between those two moments, and it turns out to be a very long and very beautiful distance indeed. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for understanding that the simplest stories, told with the truest feeling, are the ones that stay with us longest. This has been a complete deep dive into The Princess Diaries 2001. Share your thoughts. Tell someone who needs it that they are enough.